Okay, hello guys, warm welcome from our new record room. So we just moved over and are pretty happy about this awesome stuff what we have here. Today we're gonna talk about fuel cells, and at my side my good friend and dear colleague Daniel. So Daniel, welcome.
G'day mate, good to be back. Good to be in the new studio. It's been a long time making, and glad we can do our first video here.
Absolutely. So we will also send you some photos through LinkedIn and so on. You can have a look in here. You should always participate what's going on here. But today let's focus on our topic fuel cell and on our UniTrain system fuel cell. So the idea is here, what can we do in training for apprenticeship and everything like that in the automotive context in order to explain how fuel cells work in vehicles? What we are using here is our UniTrain system. So this is a complete fuel cell, what you basically see here. We already set the system up. So if you have the system and you are keen about to get to know how you're getting that system into operation, just go to the linked video, which will show the setup of the system. Okay, Daniel, fuel cells in vehicles.
It's becoming a big topic now, of course. So fuel cells, if we talk about hydrogen, and there's actually two different methods that it's being used in modern vehicles now. So one side is the fuel cell. A fuel cell is actually a way of creating electricity. So in fact, the hydrogen fuel cell vehicle is an electric vehicle with a chance to fill the vehicle up again with hydrogen, so that it's kind of like a hybrid vehicle almost. You're extending the range of the
That's always interesting. I think there's kind of people are a little bit like, okay, is it an electric vehicle? Is it a hybrid vehicle? What is it exactly?
Well, there's actually also the case, there's combustion, there's hydrogen combustion.
Oh, that's a completely different story, yes, don't mix that up.
Yeah, we're seeing that on a lot of trucks have that now as well. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about hydrogen literally as a source of energy.
So basically, to some degree, we can talk to define that a bit. It's like a little bit like a serial hybrid, but where you don't have a combustion engine, which is creating electric energy to charge the battery.
Exactly, it's kind of like a range extender.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you don't fuel up with fuel, you fuel up with hydrogen, basically.
Exactly. And so that's what we've got here, is we've got a little, obviously, when we look at vehicles with hydrogen fuel cells, they have huge amounts of energy within the tanks.
This is just the point. So when you just look up the latest Mirai of Toyota, for example, they have even 3 tanks separated all around the car. And
it's interesting why they do that. So the tanks for hydrogen under extreme pressure, so hundreds of bars, so thousands of PSI if you speak that language. That's really a lot of pressure for these tanks, and they're actually wrapped in carbon.
In what shape do you find them at the car? How
so
do they
they're
look
long
like?
cylinders, smaller.
Yeah.
So the thing with pressure is you want smaller tanks. The bigger the tank, the more the pressure is, so they're more likely to explode or to rupture.
And obviously no edges, but just round forms.
Exactly. So they've split it out over 3, on one side for weight distribution, but the other side is to keep them small, so the pressure or the surface area is less. So obviously the bigger tank has more surface area inside, which obviously can mean more pressure on that surface if there's...
Okay, so we have the tank basically where the hydrogen is going into, but what else do we have on the car? We said it's basically like an electric car. So we have an electric motor, obviously.
Obviously, yeah. You've got the electric motor, you've got the inverter running that, then you've also got the battery.
The battery?
To run that as well. So, and the battery,
high voltage battery, of course.
High voltage battery, and it's much smaller, like a hybrid vehicle as well.
Why is that the case?
So obviously there's not enough room within the vehicle once you've got the tank. So EVs normally have the entire floor is made of the battery. In this case here, we've got 1 or 2 or 3 hydrogen tanks there as well. So the battery's smaller, but because we're now getting our energy from the hydrogen, there's no need for that larger battery.
And it's high capacity basically because you can charge while you drive. What is typical for a serial hybrid basically?
Yep. We're still not at the point where the fuel cell can supply the entire energy for the vehicle. We're not quite at that point yet. It'll probably come one day, I guess.
So it's more or less also like a buffer, the high voltage battery in
Exactly.
between. Especially when you do acceleration, I can imagine, and you need a really high peak current. So that can't, I think the fuel cell is too slow on that. And there you need a battery which can give you quickly electrical energy there.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, then we have the inverter as well. The car is getting oxygen, hydrogen from the tank, oxygen from the environment, of course. How is that done at this system? So what do we have here when we have a look at that system?
Sure. So we've actually got this here. We're using distilled water. So that's, for this system, it's really important to use distilled water, and we're putting it into this thing called the electrolyzer. So the reason we use distilled water is if you've used a kettle or the dishwasher or something like that, after it's been around for a little while, you'll see all of the minerals that form on everything.
Yeah.
So if you do that within this, the minerals will form within the membrane, within the fuel cell. And so that's why it's really important to use distilled water.
Okay, so no tap water here.
So we obviously don't want to play with 700 bars worth of pressure in the classroom, so
could be interesting.
We use this thing called an electrolyzer. So we've got our software here. Christian, maybe you can just press start on the electrolyzer unit there. So this is now, how many amps is that running at? 2 amps. So we're actually creating hydrogen from electricity. So we've got water in here, the distilled water, and we can see here we've got the O2, H2, I need to just spin around so you can see that, but one side is the oxygen is coming out, the other side is the hydrogen coming out, and that's filling up into this chamber here, going around into the tubes that we've got there, and then on into the fuel cell.
But this guy we don't have at a real car, right?
No, so this is just for us to create some hydrogen, and in this case oxygen, for us to put into our fuel cell.
So like we said, this one would be replaced at a real car through the hydrogen tanks and getting the oxygen from the environmental air.
Exactly. So what we have here in the middle is a membrane. It's called a PEM membrane, and that's where we're putting the two gases onto each side. And we'll show an animation what happens there, but essentially you've got the molecules passing through and the electrons passing through the membrane. So you're taking the electricity off as they go through the membranes, and the oxygen and the water are recombining, and that's what you can actually see on the insides of the unit here.
Yeah, I see.
So water is combined, so oxygen and hydrogen are being placed into the membrane, and by the time it gets out to the exhaust, it's then recombining into water. And that's perfectly normal. And the reason we have these two here is the gas is being pulled apart, or the water is being pulled apart here, the oxygen and hydrogen and the electrolyzer here, and it's coming out through the liquid through the water, and it's building up into this chamber here. So we've got the straw, and you can see on the top chamber here, we can see we're building up the water. And that's just because the gas is pushing out and creating its room there. The advantage that we have here is, so now our lines here, our tubes, are under pressure. So the water here is pushing, creating pressure into our membrane right here. So again, hydrogen on one side, oxygen on the other, and then we've pushed it into the membrane right
so
here.
How is that done on a real car when you say like they have to put pressure on it or push it into the fuel cell? So do you have kind of injectors on a real car, or how does it work there?
Absolutely. So it's not like a combustion engine that's obviously
in the combustion chamber,
pulling its own air in. In this one we need to push the air, the gases across the membrane.
So you need an external component like a compressor, for example, gets the air into it. I mean, when we think about a combustion engine, you have a natural sucking there just because of the piston move, of course. obviously you don't have that here. Of course, you have also like compressor or turbocharger on a normal combustion engine, but here's something also that you pressurize the air or the oxygen and get that into the fuel cell.
And what you actually see is like a high voltage turbo. So there's a turbo running on high voltage.
Okay, got it.
Pushing the air into the system.
So pretty similar like to some combustion engine which use that. For example, the Audi SQ5, there is a version who's using an electric turbocharger for a combustion engine in a bunch of other normal exhaust turbochargers. But here, okay, you have electric turbocharger, which makes sense as this is an electrical system.
Exactly.
Which needs a higher, but this turbocharger is then running on high voltage, on what voltage level? Because sometimes they have a
48 volt.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, there's 48 volt ones that are running that as well.
Cool. Well, I just want to have just one question here. When you see now, we're talking here of a fuel cell. So that sounds to me pretty similar, like when we're talking about a high voltage battery and speaking there about the lithium ion cell. So and obviously there you have a stack of cells. How is that done now in a car with a fuel cell? We're speaking of a fuel cell, but do we have maybe also a stack of fuel cells in the car?
That's a good point. So the cell in this case is the element which is actually creating that electricity. So from the sides here we can see that there's also an electrical connection there, and we can even measure what the voltage is here. And if we have a look from above, we can see that we're looking at about 0.9 volts for this cell. So in this case, we have two.
Yeah.
There's two separate cells here. But in a vehicle, you're looking at hundreds of these cells put together into a stack.
So it's a little bit like the idea of a high voltage battery where you have one lithium iron cell which has like 3.7 volt and you create a higher voltage through the series or parallel connection of those cells.
Exactly.
Sounds like pretty similar here.
It's exactly the same. So it's a matter of building up the voltage through series connection and then building up the capacity through parallel connections as well.
And just that you get an idea, so for example at the Toyota Mirai they have like 300 of these cells in one fuel cell stack, let's call it that way then.
Exactly. So what we've got now, we've actually got a little motor.
Just want to point it to that.
Right here. So what I'll do is actually connect that up right now.
So he's now connecting that to our UniTrain interface, basically what we have here as well. So that's the UniTrain interface and there it's the fuel cell.
So you can see here I've got a bridge wire between the two stacks, the two cells. So we can use one cell, but two together we're looking at a little bit higher voltage.
And when we would do now like a voltage or current measurement, then we would use this side over here, as here are our measuring channels. And you can imagine that as a real oscilloscope, amp meter, voltmeter, which is just running on the computer. All right, it's already spinning.
So spinning around, we can see that. And what's interesting here, we're not actually having any flow going through the cell at all, through the stack. So there's pressure within there, but it's not moving. So it's literally just using the gases that are inside the cell right now. So if I was just to open these little connectors, so this is what we call flushing. So we've got these little clamps here, and as you can see the hydrogen come through, and when I open it up here, well, let's see if we can notice a little bit of a speed increase on the motor.
Yeah, you hear from the sound.
Yeah, and you can see here that my chamber has dropped down. Oxygen as well, it will deplete the oxygen. Well, not deplete it, it literally joins it back together, as I spoke about before in water.
Can I imagine this like, so getting a good flow into the whole system then? Is it that about basically?
Well, in this case, we're about getting rid of the air. So the first time you use the system, it's going to have normal air within it. And that obviously doesn't run on air.
Yeah.
It needs the hydrogen and the oxygen. And so what we're doing is we're flushing out all of the air and replacing it with pure hydrogen and oxygen instead.
Sounds to me a little bit similar like also in the combustion engine. There are the method of scavenging where you have both valves open that you get a really good flow or airstream through the cylinders. So It sounds a little bit similar here.
Yep.
Okay, when we come to the end of the car, what are the exhausts basically with the fuel cell now? So obviously we don't have a combustion here, so where we have a lot of bad emissions. Basically we have oxygen and hydrogen. Sounds like water.
Exactly.
So obviously, what is the emission of a fuel cell vehicle?
Well, you can actually see it in here, and at times when you've been using the system long enough, you'll need to let the water out. So it's completely normal. It's literally just water comes out the tailpipe.
How is that on a real car then when you say water comes out? Does it just spray
It does
whenever
actually.
it wants?
So if you've ever seen these vehicles driving down the street, on the highway, autobahn, whatever, there's sometimes you'll see, and it looks like a bucket of water has been tipped out. And in fact, what you'll see on some vehicles, there's actually a release button inside the vehicle.
Okay, cool.
So you can press that, and it will. So before you park it in the garage or something like that, you can, or
get rid of
do
the
a
water.
service, you can get rid of the water.
Cool. I think we had now a pretty good introduction, as here is the focus on how the fuel cell works. And then we just get an idea what happens inside the fuel cell, because here you have a perfect chance to look inside it, and this is what we always do and try to do with these videos, give you the chance to look into the things. But I think we are just at the beginning when we are talking about the topic of fuel cells, and this can be a video out of many regarding this topic.
I think so.
I think as Daniel is the head of the automotive department at Lucas-Nuelle, I think you also plan to develop more into that direction. But of course, what's the challenge here basically when we're talking about this fuel cell, especially in training and apprenticeship?
It's a really big topic. We get a lot of requests to have some sort of training system. This is obviously our introductory training system, but we're looking at what is going to be the focus in the future. So obviously high voltage vehicle, an electric vehicle, you're going to need the whole process behind it as well. So being able to shut down a vehicle, making it safe, doing insulation testing, things like that. But on top of that, we're going to have this high pressure tanks. They need to be inspected and make sure that everything is okay there. So that's going to go on top of this. So it's, at this stage, the training is really focused on the manufacturers. So it's mainly the Toyota, Hyundai that have the vehicles on the street. They're doing a lot of the training themselves, but there's certainly a huge push for hydrogen. We won't go into the politics about if it makes sense or not, because obviously what we didn't go through here before, we're using two amps of current to create the split within the water of hydrogen and oxygen. But it's not 100% efficient, so there's losses within the system.
Yeah, of course, I see.
So it comes down to renewable energies or how you're creating the hydrogen in the first place to drive it. So we're not going to go into that.
I think that's the big question here. But when you just focus the car in that instant now.
Exactly, and the vehicle. There is, no matter what happens, this technology is coming into the market. So we have to be prepared for it. Regardless of what the politics say. So it's good. We're at that level where we're starting to understand it. What we do in those vehicles will come down the track pretty soon, I would say.
So if I understand you correctly, right now there's not a real standard. So also the car manufacturers are just in the self-finding phase, where it's about what will be the way how to deal with those cars inside the workshop. Similar to what is now defined for electric vehicles. Basically, fuel cell will be your own training topic where you need to define some standards, but they are not finished yet, obviously.
No. So it's mainly only the first awareness of the systems. There's no qualifications that I'm aware of on a national level that talk about hydrogen, repairing of hydrogen vehicles.
So it doesn't matter
mainly manufacturers right now.
If we talk about German qualifications, US ASE qualifications, or does the IMI have something?
They have their introductory level, but it doesn't go into so much into the technology, especially not repairing them.
Okay, I think there we see right now we are really at the beginning, and here, so this is the first of all topics which we can deliver now and which is just set. All the other topics are not set. They need to be defined. And be sure, as soon as we get information from the car manufacturers and all our partners around the world that this is more clearer, then we will come with another videos and go more into more into detail with fuel cells, but we are absolutely happy to know what are your expectations here. How interesting is that topic for you regarding fuel cells? Please ask your questions, give us your comments, what you wish for the future regarding the topic of fuel cells and how important that is for you, basically. All right, cool. Thanks very much, brother.
My pleasure, mate.
Awesome time. I would say we stop here for now. Like I said, happy for your comments, and we see us soon with another video and on another topic. Maybe, well, what do we have in planning?
Oh,
I think ADAS, EV. Just tell us what you want to see, and we will come back with that. Okay, enough. Long story short, have a great day and see you soon.
Later.